Introduction. Close your eyes. Take a slow breath in and let it go. Let your body settle into wherever it is resting tonight. Feel the weight of yourself, the comfortable heaviness of arms and legs and shoulders that have been carrying you through the day and can now, at last, set that work down. Breathe in again and out. Good. Tonight, I want to take you somewhere warm, somewhere quiet, somewhere that smells of old paper and wood smoke, and the particular, unhurried atmosphere of a place where time moves differently, where the hours are not divided into tasks and obligations, but into reading and browsing, and the slow pleasure of being surrounded by books. There is a bookshop on a narrow street in an old city. You may have passed it before without noticing. It is easy to miss, set slightly below street level, its window small and always a little dusty, its sign so faded by weather and years that you have to look carefully to read it. The sign says simply, books. Not the shop's name, not the owner's name, just books. As if no further description is needed, as if the word itself is sufficient, which it is. The remarkable thing about this bookshop, the thing that sets it apart from every other bookshop you have ever visited, is that it never closes. Not in the evenings, not at night, not on Sundays or public holidays, or the quiet days between Christmas and the New Year when the rest of the street is shuttered and still. The light in the window is always on. The door is always unlocked. Whenever you arrive, whatever the hour, the bookshop is there. Tonight, you are going to spend the whole night in it. Come, let me take you there. Part 1, the street. The street is narrow and old. The kind of street that was laid down before anyone thought carefully about the width of carts, let alone the width of vehicles. A street that requires two people to turn sideways if they meet, and both wish to pass without touching. The buildings on either side lean very slightly toward each other, their upper floors closer than their lower floors, as if after centuries of standing opposite each other they have grown comfortable and are beginning, slowly, to close the distance. It is late evening. The lamps on this street are old. The city kept the original iron lamp posts when it modernized the lighting in the older quarters, replacing only the gas mantles with electric bulbs. So the light they cast is the same golden, slightly uneven light that has lit this street for 150 years. Each lamp makes a pool of amber on the cobblestones below it, and between the pools, the cobblestones are dimmer, the shadows deeper, the spaces between the lights belonging more to the past than to the present. Your footsteps on the cobblestones are the only footsteps. The street is empty at this hour, not deserted, not the emptiness of a place that has been abandoned. Just the settled, contented emptiness of a street that has sent its daytime population home for the evening and is resting, its buildings at ease in the quiet, its lamps burning for no one in particular. You walk down it slowly. The air is cool and slightly damp, autumn. And this street holds the damp longer than wider streets do. The buildings close on either side, keeping out the wind that would dry things. The smell of the damp cobblestones, of old stone and old mortar, and the particular mineral smell of ancient city streets is all around you. Ahead on the left, below street level, a warm light. The bookshop. Part 2, the window. You pause at the top of the 3 worn steps that lead down to the bookshop's door. The window is to your right, not large, as windows go. Perhaps 60 centimeters wide and 90 tall, set deep in the stone wall. Its frame painted dark green at some point in the not-too-recent past. The paint now slightly peeled at the corners. The glass is old glass, not perfectly flat, not perfectly clear, with the faint imperfections of handmade glass, a slight waviness that distorts the interior of the shop very gently, the way water distorts things seen through it. Through the window, the interior of the shop glows. A lamp, a standing lamp with a dark green shade, the classic reading lamp shape, is visible just inside the window. Its light warm and contained, illuminating a small section of the shop's interior. A table with books arranged on it, face up, their covers visible in the lamplight. An open book on the table, its pages marked with a ribbon. The edge of a bookshelf, its spines just visible. In the window itself, a display, not a modern, carefully curated display. An old-fashioned window display, books stacked and leaning and arranged in ways that suggest less design than accumulation, as if the books arrived over many years and were placed in the window as they came, and were never quite reorganized. A small wooden sign leans against the glass from inside, hand-lettered. All HOURS. Come in. You come in. Part 3, the door. The door is old. Dark wood, painted the same dark green as the window frame. Its paint worn at the handle and along the lower edge where feet have pushed it. A brass handle, tarnished to a warm dark gold, smooth from years of hands. A small bell above the door, not a modern doorbell, but an actual bell. A small brass bell on a curved spring that rings when the door is opened and swings. You push the door open. The bell sounds once, clear and small and musical, the tone of old brass. A brief, pure note that rings out and then fades. Then the smell reaches you. If you have been in old bookshops before, you know this smell. If you have not, nothing I can say will quite prepare you for it. It is not a single smell, but a dozen layered together. Old paper, which has its own complex chemistry of vanilla and almonds, and something slightly dusty and completely its own. The smell of old binding cloth and old leather, and the particular smell of ink that has been dried for decades. Underneath these, wood the bookshelves, old wood, dry and slightly sweet. And beneath everything, very faint, wood smoke from the small stove in the back of the shop that burns through the colder months. You step inside. The bell rings once more as the door closes behind you, and the bookshop closes around you like a held breath that has been waiting to be released. You are in. Part 4, the first room. The bookshop is larger than it looks from the street. This is something old bookshops do. They appear from outside to occupy a modest space. And then once you are inside, they reveal themselves to be much deeper and stranger and more labyrinthine than their exterior suggests. This one extends back from the street-level window into the building behind and below, room giving way to room, narrow passages between shelves leading to unexpected spaces, a back room, and then another back room, and what appears to be a passage leading down to a basement level. But first, the front room. This is the largest room, the one visible from the street. The bookshelves here run from floor to ceiling, and the ceiling is high, higher than you would expect in a street-level shop, perhaps 4 meters. The upper shelves accessible by a rolling ladder on a brass rail that runs the length of 2 walls. The ladder is currently resting at the far end of the left wall, a book left open on the top rung. The shelves are full, not merely well-stocked. Full, the kind of fullness that happens over decades of acquisition, where the original orderly arrangement of books spine outward on properly sized shelves has been supplemented by books laid horizontally on top of the upright ones, and then by books wedged into whatever space remained above those, and then by stacks on the floor beside the shelves when even that space was exhausted. Every shelf is doubled, tripled in places, books everywhere stacked on the table in the center of the room, arranged on the window seat, piled on the floor at the base of the ladder. Not chaotic, exactly. The chaos has its own logic, the way the chaos of a lived-in room has its own logic. Things are here because they arrived and were placed and were not moved. And over time, the accumulation became a landscape, and the landscape became familiar, and the familiar became home. You stand in the doorway and look at it. The lamp by the window casts its warm circle. 2 other lamps are on, one on the table in the center, one on a shelf bracket in the far corner. The rest of the room is in the warm half-darkness of a space that is lit just enough to see in, just enough to read in, not bright enough to demand your full alertness. The shop is quiet, not empty. There is someone at the back you sense rather than see. A presence, a quiet occupation, but quiet. You walk in. Part 5, the bookseller. The bookseller is an older man. He is behind the wooden counter at the back of the front room, seated on a high stool, bent over a book. He does not look up when you enter, though the bell has clearly rung, and he has clearly heard it. The slight change in his posture, the minimal adjustment of his attention, tells you that he is aware of your presence without requiring it to announce itself more loudly. He is reading, or he was reading before you arrived, and is continuing to read now with the practiced capacity of someone who can read in almost any circumstances. The book is open on the counter before him, his reading glasses on his nose, one hand holding the edge of the page lightly. He is dressed in the clothes of a man who has not thought about his clothes for some time. Dark trousers, a collared shirt, a cardigan the color of old moss, a pair of reading glasses on a cord around his neck that that are currently on his nose and will at some point migrate to his chest or the top of his head and will need to be found again. You approach the counter. He looks up. His face is the face of a man who has spent most of his life among books. Not pale, as you might expect, but somehow lit, as if the accumulated light of years of reading has left its mark. His eyes, behind the glasses, are interested, curious, the eyes of someone for whom attention is not a discipline, but a pleasure. He says nothing. He simply looks at you with a mild, open expression that says, "You are welcome here, whatever the hour, whatever you need." You say you'd like to look around for a while. He nods once and returns to his book. Welcome. Part 6, the shelves. You begin to move through the shelves. The organization of the bookshop is its own mystery. There is a system. You can tell that there is a system because certain areas clearly cohere. Here, several shelves of travel books, their spines worn and their covers faded by the reading of people who carried them on journeys. Here, an area of old paperbacks, their covers in the style of particular decades, their pages yellowed to different degrees, depending on the quality of the paper. Here, a section whose hand-lettered label reads, with admirable brevity, everything else. But the system is not alphabetical, not exactly by subject, not by date or language or format. The system is something else, something that makes sense to the bookseller, and perhaps, after enough time spent here, would make sense to you too. A kind of logic of association, where books are shelved near other books they have something to say to, where the conversation between neighbors matters more than any external classification. You run your fingers along a row of spines. The textures are extraordinary. Cloth covers, smooth and slightly worn. Leather covers, cool and slightly grainy. Dust jackets, a little stiff, crackling slightly at the corners where they have been creased. Boards without jackets, their linen or cotton covering soft with age. One very old book with a spine of cracked leather, its title barely legible in gilt letters that have mostly rubbed away. You stop at this one. You pull it out. It is small octavo, perhaps, the size of a handheld, comfortable object. The cover is brown leather, mottled with age, the edges rounded by handling. It smells intensely of old book, not unpleasantly, the opposite. And when you open it, the pages are thick and slightly ivory-colored, the print in a typeface that is not used anymore, a typeface with long ascenders and thick serifs, and a particular quality of craft that belongs to a different age of making. You cannot quite make out the title. The gilt is too worn. You turn the pages gently. The paper makes a sound, a soft, slightly crispy sound, the sound of old paper turned with care. Each page turn a small event, a small decision, to see what comes next. You close the book. You slide it back into its place on the shelf. It belongs here. Everything here belongs here. Part 7, the middle room. You move through a narrow passage between two tall shelves and find yourself in the middle room. This room is smaller than the front room and lower ceilinged, bookshelves here are the most densely packed of any in the shop. They fill every wall from floor to ceiling, and in the center of the room, a freestanding double-sided shelf creates a further island of books. And between the wall shelves and the island, there is just enough space to walk, barely, sideways in places. The light in here is dimmer, a single lamp on a small table in the corner, a table that is itself covered in books, stacked carefully. The lamp perched on the only clear space at one corner. The lamplight barely reaches the upper shelves. The top 2 rows of every bookcase in this room exist in a warm, amber half-darkness. There are 2 chairs in this room. Both are armchairs, both old, both occupied not by people, but by books. Each chair has a stack of books in the seat, carefully placed, as if someone sat there reading many books over many evenings and left each one on the chair when they were done, creating a stratigraphy of reading, a layered record of evenings spent. You lift the top book from the nearer chair. It is a novel. You can tell from the way it is worn, the way the cover is bent at the corners from being read lying down, the bookmark, a torn piece of envelope, placed about 2/3 of the way through. Someone read this 2/3 of the way and stopped. Or someone reads it very slowly, and 2/3 of the way is where they have arrived so far. You put it back carefully, the bookmark where it was. The middle room smells more strongly of old books than the front room, perhaps because it is smaller and the ventilation is less, or perhaps simply because the books here are older. The vanilla almond smell of aged paper is more present here, more complex, mixed with the dry, slightly sweet smell of old binding glue and the faint leather smell of the older volumes. You breathe it in. There are very few smells in the world as immediately and profoundly comforting as this one. Part 8, the small stove. In the corner of the middle room, almost hidden by a stack of books on either side of it, is the small stove. It is a cast iron stove, very old, very small, the kind that would have been used a century ago for heating a single room with coal or wood. Now it burns wood, small dry pieces that the bookseller cuts from a box beside the stove and feeds into it at intervals through the evening. The fire inside is visible through the small mica window in the stove door, a red-orange glow, small and contained and steady. The warmth it radiates is gentle and directional. Standing near it, you feel the warmth on the side of you facing the stove, while the other side remains at the temperature of the room. A pleasant asymmetry, the warmth coming from a single point, as warmth always came before the age of central heating, not filling the space evenly, but flowing from its source, warmest nearest the source, and diminishing as you move away. The stove ticks, a small, intermittent sound, the metal expanding and contracting slightly as the temperature fluctuates. Each tick a tiny percussion, entirely regular in its irregularity. Tick, then silence, then tick again. The clock sound of a small fire. You stand near the stove for a moment. The warmth finds your hands. You had not noticed until this moment that your hands were cool. The bookshop is warm overall, but the autumn night outside is cold, and the chill had crept in with you when you entered and settled quietly in your fingers. And now the stove's warmth is finding it and dissolving it, degree by degree. Your hands warm, the fire ticks, the books are all around you, close and quiet. Part 9, the bookseller's habits. Through the evening, you observe the bookseller. He does not perform the act of running a bookshop. He simply inhabits it, the way a person inhabits a space they have lived in for so long that it has become an extension of themselves. At irregular intervals, he rises from his stool and walks into the shop. Sometimes he walks with purpose, going to a specific shelf to find a specific book, perhaps one that he remembered while reading, that belongs with or responds to what he is currently reading. He finds it without hesitation, as if the location of every book in the shop is simply known to him, the way the geography of a childhood home is known, not consciously held, but immediately available when needed. Sometimes he walks without purpose, or not without purpose, but with a different kind of purpose, a wandering. He moves through the shelves slowly, touching the spines with one hand, not reading the titles, but feeling them. His fingertips finding the familiar textures of books he has handled hundreds of times. His face in these moments is calm and slightly inward-looking, the face of someone doing something that is as natural and as necessary to them as breathing. He makes tea at some point in the evening from a small electric kettle behind the counter. He makes tea, the sound of the kettle, the chink of the cup, the smell of tea drifting from behind the counter into the shop. He drinks it at the counter, his book open, the cup near his hand. He does not speak much. Once, briefly, when you are near the counter, he says, not looking up from his book, that the section in the far left corner has some things that might interest you. He says this without knowing what interests you, without asking, with the particular confidence of someone who has been matching people with books for so long that they have developed an instinct for it. You go to the far left corner. He is right. Part 10, the far left corner. The far left corner of the front room is shelved differently from the rest. The other shelves have their subject groupings, their loose organization, their accumulated double stacking and horizontal piling. But this corner, 3 shelves on the left wall and 2 more on the adjacent wall, forming a right angle, has been arranged with more care. The books here are upright and single-layered, the spines facing outward, the titles readable, the section organized not by genre or subject, but by something harder to name. Quiet books, perhaps. Books that ask very little of you. Books that are good to read at night. You stand in the corner and let your eyes move slowly along the spines. There's something about this that is its own pleasure, not the reading of the books, not the choosing of a book to read, but simply the reading of the spines. Each one a brief, compressed communication. Title, author, sometimes a word or image from the cover design that is visible from the spine. Each spine a doorway to a world that exists inside the book and nowhere else. You reach out and touch one. It is a collected edition of essays, natural history essays, written by someone in the early part of the last century, in the style of someone who spent a great deal of time outdoors and paid close attention to what they found there, and had the gift of writing about it in a way that made you feel you were paying attention alongside them. You open it. The pages are thin and slightly yellowed, and the print is small and clear. And the first sentence of the first essay tells you exactly where you are going. Into a marsh at dawn in midsummer, the light coming up over the reeds and the water birds beginning their morning. You take the book to one of the chairs in the middle room. You move the stack of books from the seat, gently, carefully, onto the floor beside the chair. You sit down. You begin to read. Part 11, reading. Reading in a bookshop at night is different from reading anywhere else. Not different in the words. The words are the same words they would be anywhere. But the context changes the reading. The way the same music sounds different in a concert hall than it does through headphones. The bookshop makes the reading more itself. You are surrounded by more books, all the other books you are not reading, and their presence gives the book in your hands a quality of being chosen, of being the one from among the many, which makes the reading of it feel more deliberate, more pleasurable. The Marsh at Dawn. The author writes about it with such unhurried attention that reading about it requires unhurried attention in return. Each sentence is dense with observation, not complex sentences, not long ones, but dense with the specific, concrete details that close attention produces. The specific color of the light on the water, the specific sound of the reed buntings beginning their song, the way the mist over the marsh at this hour is not uniform, but has its own geography, thick in the low places and thin in the higher grass. You read slowly, not because the prose is difficult, but because it rewards slowness. Each sentence, read slowly enough, opens into something larger than itself. You read a sentence about the behavior of a particular bird, and then you sit for a moment with the sentence, not analyzing it, just holding it, and it continues to give you things, the particular feeling of that observation, the quality of attention that produced it, the early morning marsh quality of the air around it. The small stove ticks nearby. The lamp on the table in the corner provides its warm, sufficient light. From somewhere in the front room, the soft sound of the bookseller's book being placed on the counter, the clink of his teacup, the small sounds of his continued, unhurried presence. You read Part 12, the hour DEPNS. The hour deepens around the bookshop. Outside, on the narrow street, the night has fully settled. The last of the evening walkers have gone home. The last of the restaurants in the next street have sent out their last customers. The lamp posts are burning for no one. The cobblestones are empty and gleaming with the faint moisture of the autumn night. inside, nothing changes. The lamps burn at the same warmth. The stove ticks its quiet tick. The smell of the books is the same smell, if anything, slightly richer, as the warmth of the evening has coaxed more of the vanilla and almond notes from the old paper. You have set down the natural history essays and are simply sitting, not reading, not doing anything, sitting in the old armchair in the middle room with your hands in your lap and your eyes slightly unfocused, and the bookshop all around you and the night outside. There is a quality to sitting in a bookshop at this hour that is unlike sitting anywhere else. You are surrounded by the accumulated thought of hundreds, thousands of writers, people who sat at their own desks, in their own rooms, in their own particular moments of history, and committed something to paper that was then printed and bound and sold, and came eventually through the various pathways of the book trade to a shelf in this shop. Each spine you can see from where you are sitting represents one of those moments, a period of effort and thought and language shaped into a form that can be held in a hand and opened and entered. All of that thought surrounding you, quiet on its shelves, not demanding to be read, not urgent, just present, available, patient. You breathe in the smell of it, and something in your chest loosens quietly, without announcement. Part 13, the basement. At some point in the evening, you have lost track of time, which is one of the bookshop's most reliable gifts. You find the stairs to the basement. They are at the back of the shop, behind the counter, a narrow wooden staircase going down. A sign beside the opening reads, in the bookseller's handwriting, downstairs, which is not so much a description as a permission. You go down. The staircase is steep and the treads are narrow, and you put one hand on the wall for balance as you descend. The wall is cool and slightly rough. The basement walls are stone, original foundation stone, thick and old, and slightly damp in the way that below ground stone always is, the moisture of the earth seeping through in its slow, patient way. The basement is one long room, lower ceilinged than upstairs. You can stand upright, but only just, the beams crossing overhead close to your head. The shelves down here are rougher than the ones upstairs, older, simpler, just boards on brackets, many of them sagging slightly under the weight of the books they hold. The light is dimmer. 2 hanging bulbs bare, their warm filaments visible through the glass, casting the uneven light of exposed bulbs. The books down here are older, very old, some of them. The kind of books that the upstairs of the shop has outgrown, or that arrived in lots from estates or auction houses, and have been stored here while their place in the overall scheme of things is determined. Bound volumes of old periodicals, their spines labeled by year and title, the years going back further than you expected. Large, heavy art books with cloth covers, their corners worn to the cardboard beneath. Sets of encyclopedias in matching bindings, their gold lettering still legible on most, but faded on some. The smell down here is different, stronger, more concentrated. The paper here is older on average, and the air circulates less. And the particular chemistry of old books is more present, more intense, more completely itself. You stand in the basement and breathe. It is completely quiet down here. The sounds of the street, barely audible upstairs, are entirely absent. The sound of the bookseller at his counter, the small, intermittent sounds of his presence, is gone. There is only the basement, and the books, and the hanging lights, and the sound of your own breathing. You walk along the shelves very slowly, not reading the titles or reading some of them, the legible ones, but mostly just walking, being present, being in the room with the old books in their rows, the accumulated years on the shelves. Part 14, the old map. In the far corner of the basement, pinned to the stone wall, is a map. An old map, not framed, just pinned at its four corners with brass pins that have greened slightly with age. The paper of the map has darkened at the edges and is pale at the center where the light has reached it. And the paper itself has the particular quality of very old paper, fragile, slightly translucent in the thinner sections, with the visible texture of the handmade. It is a map of the city as it was. How many years ago you cannot immediately tell, but the streets are different, some of them present that are not present now, some absent that now exist. The names of streets and districts and buildings are written in a hand-lettered script that is careful and even and has the quality of craft, of someone who took the drawing of letters seriously. You find the narrow street. It is there, the street where the bookshop stands, exactly where it is now. Its line on the map unchanged from however many centuries ago this map was drawn. The streets change, the buildings change, the city changes. But this street is the same. This particular narrow crease in the old city, running its particular course between the buildings that lean toward each other. The bookshop is not on the map. It was not here when the map was drawn, or the map maker did not mark it. But the street is here. The space is here. The place where the bookshop now sits was empty then, or occupied by something else, or occupied by the same building in an earlier form. The city accretes, layer on layer, each generation living in the space built by the generation before, modifying it, adding to it, using it for purposes the builders never imagined. And somewhere in all of that accretion, at some point in the long history of this street, a bookshop opened, and it never closed. Part 15, back upstairs. You climb back up the narrow stairs to the main shop. The warmth of the upper rooms hits you as you reach the top of the stairs. The basement was cooler, the stone walls maintaining a steady chill that the small stove's warmth could not quite reach. Here, in the front rooms, the warmth is complete and welcoming. The bookseller looks up from his counter. You tell him about the map in the basement, the old map on the wall, the city as it was. He nods. He says that the map came with the building when he acquired the lease, that the previous bookseller had it, and the bookseller before that. He says he has spent considerable time with it over the years. He says that the building has been here for 400 years in various forms, and that books of some kind have been sold from this address for at least 250 of those years. 250 years. You let that number settle. The bookseller nods again, with the satisfied expression of someone who considers this entirely proper. He makes 2 cups of tea, one for himself, one for you, placing yours on the counter without fanfare. You lean on the counter and drink your tea. He reads. The lamp between you casts its circle. Part 16. Tea, 8 the counter. The tea is strong and very hot, and the cup it comes in is slightly too large for one hand, requiring both, which is the right way to hold a cup of tea at night in a cold city in an old bookshop. You stand at the counter with the cup in both hands and look at the front room. From here at the counter, you can see the whole room, the shelves on every wall, the rolling ladder resting at the end of the left wall, the table in the center with its books and its lamp, the window and the dark street beyond it. The lamp in the window makes the glass a mirror from this side. You can see the reflection of the room, the doubled books, the warm light reflected back at itself. The bookseller beside you turns a page. The sound of a page turning in an old book is one of the specific pleasures of this place. Not the sharp snap of a new paperback's page, but the softer sound of old paper, slightly resistant, slightly heavy, a sound with body and texture. You ask him quietly about the bookshop, why it never closes. He considers this for a moment, still looking at his book. He says that his own bookseller, the man from whom he acquired this shop, who had it from the bookseller before him, told him that a bookshop that closes is a bookshop that says, "Come back another time," and that a bookshop that never closes is a bookshop that says, "Whenever you need to be here, you can be here," and that there is a difference between those two things that matters more than the practical inconvenience of staying open. He says that in 30 years of keeping the shop, more than he can count have come in at 2 in the morning, or 4, or 5. Not browsing, exactly, but needing somewhere to be that was lit and warm and full of books. He says that books are good company at any hour. He returns to his reading. You finish your tea. Part 17. The night, DEPNS. The night outside is at its deepest now. You can tell from the quality of the silence on the street. Not the silence of early evening, which still carries the residue of the day's activity. The sounds of the last people going home, the last restaurant doors closing. This is the deeper silence of 2 or 3 in the morning, when even the city has given itself over to rest. The bookshop remains exactly as it was. This is one of its most remarkable qualities. It does not respond to the hour. It does not dim its lights, or reduce its warmth, or communicate in any way the passage of time. The lamps burn with the same warmth at 3 in the morning that they burned with at 7 in the evening. The stove ticks its steady tick. The books are as they are. You are sitting again in the armchair in the middle room, the natural history essays back in your lap, though you are not reading them, just holding them. Your eyes are heavy, not the urgent, demanding heaviness of exhaustion, but the soft, pleasant heaviness of a body that is warm and comfortable and has been at rest for some time and would not object to resting more deeply. The bookshop has done this to you. It has dissolved your alertness gently and completely over the course of the evening. The warmth, the smell, the quiet, the rhythm of the bookseller's page turning and tea drinking, the weight of the books in your lap, all of it together has worked on you the way the best environments work. Without your noticing, toward rest, you set the book aside. You close your eyes, just for a moment. Part 18. The smell of old books. Let us stay with the smell, because it deserves more than a passing mention. Because it is one of the most complex and most immediately soothing smells that exists, and you are surrounded by it right now and breathing it in with every breath. Old paper smells of vanilla, not artificially, not like vanilla extract or vanilla-scented candles, but the true vanilla smell, the smell of actual vanilla pods, the smell that comes from the breakdown of lignin in the paper, the same organic compound that produces vanillin from vanilla plants. As paper ages, the lignin breaks down and releases this smell. Every old book contains within it this slow chemical process, this quiet chemistry of time. There is also the smell of almonds, from the benzaldehyde produced by the same aging process, the same slow breakdown of paper over years and decades and centuries. Not a strong almond smell, very faint, and only distinguishable if you know to look for it. But there is the smell of the binding. Old glue, hide glue, in many of these older books, made from animal collagen, with its own particular dry, slightly sweet smell. Old binding cloth, cotton or linen, very slightly dusty, very slightly warm. Old leather, where leather was used, with its complex, tannic smell that has nothing of modern leather in it, nothing of the chemical tanning processes, only the organic, slightly sweet smell of old skin treated with oak gall. And underneath everything, the wood of the shelves, very old wood, dry and slightly sweet. The cells of it open with age, releasing whatever chemistry wood releases slowly over time. All of these together, in this room, in this bookshop that never closes, in this particular hour of the night, you breathe. Part 19. The stories on the shelves. The books on the shelves carry their own stories, not just the stories inside them, the stories they have been involved in as objects over the course of their lives. The novel on the shelf with the broken spine was read, you can tell, by someone who broke the spine intentionally, who bent the book backward at its most frequently revisited passages, who returned to certain pages so often that the spine gave way there. The book opening automatically to those pages way some books do when they have been thoroughly loved. The guidebook with the handwritten notes in the margins was carried somewhere. The annotations are about specific places, specific observations made on the ground. The handwriting cramped and hurried in the way that writing is when you are making notes in the field, when the thing you are writing about is there in front of you, and you are trying to capture it before it changes. The collected poems, its pages marked at intervals with various objects, a bus ticket, a dried leaf, a folded piece of paper, was read by someone who used whatever came to hand as a bookmark, who was reading in the way that serious readers read, not just once through from front to back, but in and out, returning to particular poems, marking what mattered, building up a private map of the book's territory. Each book a record, each book a small, accumulated biography of its readers. The book on the shelf is not just the text it contains. It is the text plus all the reading it has undergone, all the marks and underlinings and turned down corners and broken spines and forgotten bookmarks. The complete record of every person who opened it and spent time with it and put it down. The Bookshop holds all of this, hundreds of thousands of small records, hundreds of thousands of hours of reading. Part 20. The bookseller sleeps. At some point in the deep of the night, you notice that the bookseller is asleep. He has not gone to bed. There is no bed visible in the bookshop, or none you have found. He is simply asleep at his counter, his cheek resting on his folded arms beside his open book, his reading glasses on the counter beside his hand, his breathing slow and deep and entirely untroubled. He sleeps in the shop. You realize, with a quiet certainty, that this is how the bookshop never closes. Not because the bookseller never sleeps, but because he sleeps in the shop, present even in his sleep. The shop his home as much as his workplace. The two things not divided. The lamp above his counter burns warmly. His book is open on the counter. The last page he read still visible. The story waiting for him to return to it. You look at him for a moment. This old man who has spent 30 or more years in this shop, who knows where every book is, who can match a person with a book by some instinct he has developed over decades of quiet attention, who keeps the lights on through the whole dark night so that anyone who needs to be here can be here. There is something very moving about this. You don't examine it or articulate it. You just feel it quietly and let it be. You go back to your chair. Part 21. Your own reading. You find another book. Not the essays this time, something thinner, shorter. A collection of stories, you think, or descriptions. A small book, the size of a hand, its cover dark blue, its spine without a title visible. You open it at random. It is descriptions of places, not travel writing exactly, not the breathless, superlative-driven writing of tourism. Something quieter, a description of a harbor at low tide, the boats sitting on the exposed mudflat, their hulls dark and slightly shining with the slick of the retreated sea. description of a market before it opens. The stalls set up and the produce arranged, but the buyers not yet arrived. The moment before the day's commerce begins. A description of a train station at midnight, empty. The tracks gleaming under the platform lights. You read these slowly. Each one takes you somewhere and leaves you there for a moment in the harbor, on the mudflat, breathing the salt air. At the market, in the pre-dawn quiet. On the empty midnight platform, alone with the gleaming tracks. Then you turn the page, and you are somewhere else. This is what books do at their best. They move you without moving you. They place you in another world while you remain where you are, creating a doubling of experience. You are both here, in this chair, in this bookshop, and there, in the harbor, on the mudflat. Both experiences real, both valid. The lamp burns. You read. Part 22. The small hours. The small hours. 3, perhaps, or near it. The deepest trough of the night. The hour when sleep is most complete in those who are sleeping, and most elusive in those who are not. The hour when the city is as close to silence as it ever gets. The bookshop is entirely quiet. The bookseller breathes at his counter. The stove has gone lower, the fire smaller, the ticks less frequent, the warmth sufficient but diminished. The room is still warm, but with a slightly cooler quality, as if the night has leaned in slightly, testing the walls. You are not reading. You have set the small blue book aside. You are sitting with your hands in your lap and your eyes half open, looking at nothing in particular. The middle distance, the space between the shelves and the opposite wall, the warm amber half-dark of the middle room at 3 in the morning. Your thoughts are very slow. Not absent, there is still a quality of consciousness, a very thin thread of awareness. You know you are here. You know the bookshop is around you. You know the smell of the books and the tick of the stove and the warm amber light. But the thoughts that usually crowd the waking mind, the planning, the reviewing, the anticipating, are gone, replaced by something quieter, more receptive. A state of pure presence without agenda. Just here, just this, just the bookshop and the night, and the breathing and the books. Part 23. What books know? Books know things, not individually. A single book knows what it contains, and nothing else. But together, as a collection, as a room full of books, or a bookshop full of books, they know things that no single book could know. They know the range of human experience, the joy and the grief and the terror, and the wonder, and the boredom, and the love, and the despair, and the elation. They know the range of human attention. What people have noticed over thousands of years, across every culture. What has seemed worth recording, worth preserving, worth sending forward into time in the form of a book. They know the range of human voice. How many different ways there are to use language. How many different rhythms and cadences and vocabularies and tones. How many ways there are to say a true thing. Sitting in a bookshop is sitting in the middle of all of this, in the middle of of accumulated human attention and human voice and human noticing. The books on the shelves are not silent in the sense of having nothing to say. They are silent only in the sense of not saying it right now, of waiting patiently to be opened, to find a reader whose attention they can fill. They are full of the things they contain, pressed between their covers, held in the order of their pages, full of the readings they have undergone, the human attention poured into them over the years, full of the waiting, which is a kind of fullness too. You sit in the middle of this fullness and breathe. Part 24. The window in the small hours. You go to the window, not the display window at the front of the shop. A smaller window in the side wall of the middle room, one you didn't notice earlier. It is set high in the wall, at head height, looking out onto a light well between the buildings. Not much of a view, just the close stone walls of the adjacent buildings, and far above, a narrow strip of sky. The sky is dark. At the bottom of the light well, the darkness is complete. No direct light reaches down there. But far above, through the narrow gap, the sky shows a very dark blue, and in that strip of blue, one star, a single star, directly above the light well, perfectly framed. You look at it for a long time. One star, burning at a distance, so vast that the number, if you said it, would be meaningless, would pass through the mind without leaving a mark, because the mind was not built for such distances. A sun burning out there in the dark, in the space between things, visible from here only as a point of light, only as this, a single bright point in a dark strip of sky, seen from the bottom of a light well in an old city, late at night, through the window of a bookshop that never closes. You look at it. It is enough. One star, through one narrow window, in the deep of the night. It is more than enough. Part 25. Before dawn. The quality of the dark changes before dawn. Not light, not yet, but a change, subtle and unmistakable, once you have learned to notice it. The dark thins slightly. The deep blue-black of the hours between midnight and 4 becomes, very gradually, something marginally less absolute. Not gray, not yet, just less dark. The bookshop does not change. The lamps burn at the same warmth. The stove, though lower now, still ticks. The bookseller still sleeps at his counter, his breathing slow and steady, his open book waiting for him on the counter. But outside, in the light well, the strip of sky has changed. The star is still there, fainter now, as stars become fainter when the sky begins to lighten. As if the stars don't disappear so much as they become less necessary. The sky finding its own light and having less need of theirs. You sit by the window for a while. The pre-dawn quiet is different from the midnight quiet. The midnight quiet is the quiet of the world in full rest. The whole city stopped, the population horizontal, the collective breath slow and deep. The pre-dawn quiet is the quiet of the world about to begin again. A slightly held quality, a pregnant quality, the silence before the first sounds of the morning. Soon there will be footsteps on the cobblestones. Soon there will be a baker somewhere nearby, whose oven has been warming for an hour already. Soon the city will begin the long, slow crescendo of its morning. But not yet. For now, the bookshop and the stillness and the fatting star. Part 26. The bookseller wakes. He wakes so quietly, you almost miss it. No start, no disorientation. One moment he is asleep, his cheek on his arms, and then, between one moment and the next, he is awake, sitting upright, his hands finding his glasses and settling them on his nose, his eyes finding his book and finding the page. He reads for a moment, then he rises, goes to the small kettle behind the counter, fills it from a tap you hadn't noticed, switches it on. He goes to the stove. He opens the door, considers the coals, adds 2 small pieces of wood. He closes the door, and the stove immediately ticks more frequently as the new wood heats. He goes to the front door, which was already unlocked. It is always unlocked, but he opens it and stands in the doorway for a moment. The street is still dark, but with the gray quality of the hour before dawn, the lamps in the street burning against a sky that no longer needs them quite as much. He breathes the morning air. He closes the door. The kettle clicks. He makes tea. He brings you a cup, setting it quietly on the arm of your chair, and returns to his counter. You wrap your hands around the cup. The warmth is exactly right. Part 27. The morning comes to the bookshop. The morning comes to the bookshop very gradually. The strip of sky in the light well, which was dark blue, then nearly black, then dark blue again, becomes lighter. Not dramatically, not all at once. A slow brightening, a gentle shift from the blue of night toward the pale, slightly warmer blue of early morning. The lamplight in the shop, which was dominant through the night, the only light, the total source of warmth and illumination in the interior, begins to compete with the daylight coming through the windows. The 2 lights are completely different qualities. The lamplight warm and amber, the daylight cool and pale. For a time they coexist, mixing in the rooms of the bookshop in a way that is very beautiful, the amber of the lamps on the wood of the shelves, the cool gray of the morning light on the book's paper, the 2 together making the shop feel both ancient and awake. The street begins. The first footsteps on the cobblestones, a single person going somewhere early, their pace steady and purposeful. Then quiet. Then the sound of a delivery vehicle somewhere in the next street, stopping and starting. Then a bird, a sparrow, from the sound of it, from the roof above the light well. It's chirping small and clear in the cool morning air. The day is beginning, but it is beginning gently, and the bookshop is receiving it gently. And you are still in your chair in the middle room with the last of your tea cooling in your hands. Part 28. Leaving. Eventually, you will have to leave. Not yet, not for a while, but eventually. The day has its own claims, And the bookshop, though it never closes, cannot be occupied forever. The bookseller has been reading for the last hour since he woke, sitting at his counter, turned to his book, the morning arriving around him with complete indifference on his part, as if the morning is just the continuation of the night, as if no particular boundary exists between one and the other in a place that never closes. You rise from your chair. You put the small blue book back where you found it. You walk through the middle room, past the stove, warm still, ticking quietly, and into the front room. The window shows the street clearly now in the pale morning light. The cobblestones are visible, their uneven surface casting small shadows in the low-angled light. The buildings opposite, their facades pale gray in the morning, their windows dark, but catching the first reflected brightness of the sky. You stand at the window for a moment. Then you go to the counter. The bookseller looks up. You thank him, not for anything specific, not for the tea, though you are grateful for that. For the night, you say. He nods. He says, "Come back," as if this is the natural ending to this kind of night. Not goodbye, but come back. As if the bookshop will be here whenever you return, lit and warm and full of books, the door unlocked, the bell ready to ring, the bookseller at his counter with his book and his tea, as if it will always be here, which you realize as you push open the door and hear the small brass bell ring once, clearly, in the morning air. It will. Epilogue. The street in the morning. You climb the 3 worn steps from the bookshop door, up to the level of the street. The morning air is cold and clean and smells of the city after a night. The particular smell of old stone and morning, and the very faint traces of last evening's smoke from the chimneys of the old buildings. The sky above the narrow street is pale and clear. The lamplight of the street posts, now barely visible against the growing daylight, unnecessary, but still burning, still doing their job until someone decides the morning is bright enough. You stand on the cobblestones. You look back at the bookshop window. The warm light of the lamp inside the shop is visible through the old glass, amber and steady, the reflection of it shifting slightly in the waviness of the glass. The books in the window display are exactly as they were when you arrived, the stacked and leaning arrangement, the small hand-lettered sign, all HOURS. Come in. The shop is open. It is always open. You carry the night in you, the smell of the old books, the warmth of the stove, the weight of the small blue book in your hands, the one star in the narrow strip of sky, the bookseller asleep at his counter with his book open. These things settle into you. They join the long accumulation of good nights, of places that held you well, of warmth remembered, of the specific, irreplaceable comfort of a room full of books at 3 in the morning. You carry them into the morning, but you are still in the chair, still in the middle room. The lamp is still burning. The stove is still ticking. The books are all around you, close and quiet and full. You don't need to leave yet. There is nowhere you need to be. Stay a little longer. Close your eyes. Let the smell of the old books be the last thing. Vanilla and almond and old wood, and the faint breath of the stove. Let the tick of the stove be the last sound. Slow, steady, quiet. The bookshop holds you. The books are all around you. The night is still long. You are warm. You are safe. You are in the bookshop that never closes. And you can stay as long as you need. Rest. Good night.